Hey there, this is Coach Bill with Meditate School of Mindfulness, and I'm coming to you today with another mindful moment. This is my mindful moment for the day, and I want to talk a little bit about the whole concept of reaching this higher state of being, a higher consciousness, and how interesting it is. How interesting it is that the term seems to have gotten so connected with a level of spirituality, which in a way it is, but when you define it that way, it almost feels as if it's only achievable to those who are practicing gurus or sages or religious practitioners, or you have to go off to some mountaintop retreat far away to reach that higher level of consciousness, that it's only achievable to certain people. So it can feel a bit wishy-washy or woo-woo to most everyone else, but and it also can seem like it's a waste of time or energy. I'm too busy to deal with that stuff, right? It's gotten a bad rap. Some of us think we can only reach these higher states of consciousness through chanting or going to a retreat or taking some special sauce, psychedelic or something that's going to make us have an out-of-body experience. But that's not what it is. It's not an outer-body experience. It is an inner self experience. Unfortunately, a lot of us spiritual practitioners have connected it to it that way, so we put people on edge by making them feel somewhat uncomfortable or making them think it's somewhat unachievable unless you check all these check marks and do all these certain things and you take all these steps and burn the right incense and sage and set the right space, then maybe you'll get there if you're lucky. But that's not it at all. In fact, it's so annoying that it's taught that way by so many people. But the concept of higher consciousness, of our higher state of being, has nothing to do with so many of these practices. Yes, they may help you get there, but I believe it has more to do with connecting to your inner self, reflecting. The way I see it is we move to connect to that most authentic place within ourselves. So why do I need somebody else to tell me what that place is? I have to discover it myself. To truly transform ourselves and change our lives, we have to discover how to get to that place and discover what that place is to me. Because it's different than it is to you or you. That's the truth. The way I explain it is that most of us spend most of our time functioning at a lower conscious level, where we pretty much are only concerned about ourselves or the people right around us, right? We're more concerned about our survival, about getting through the day, and focused on how we define ourselves and how we want the world to see us, right? It's that ego space. And it's this lower state of being where we're not so concerned about the big picture. It's more about what's in it for me. And we try to justify every decision that we make, or we get in that space of blame or looking for the person that we can get angry with or point fingers at, right? It's more about the me instead of the we. It's the most basic place that we can be. When somebody hurts us, we look to strike back. When we get caught doing something, we point blame at somebody else. When we don't look so closely at the question, we feel like we have to have all the answers already. Again, it's the what's in it for me space. But we all have those moments that are beyond the lower state of consciousness. In those moments where we don't feel the immediate demands of a busy life, or we don't feel like we're stressed or fearful of something. Maybe it's that moment when we first wake up. Maybe it's a moment where we're looking out at nature or talking with somebody that we love. Maybe it's in those moments where we really are present, where we're connecting to that higher level of consciousness. It's that place that neuroscientists call the neocortex. And it's the place of our creativity, of our imagination. It's the place of empathy. And as a meditation teacher, it is a place of non-judgment. It's a place of peace and quiet. And in that space, we allow ourselves to rise above the ego mind and not be so concerned about survival mode. We allow ourselves to be present in the space that we're in. And when we reach that place, we're more open and accepting to see things as they are. We're more open and accepting to the fact that we are more than just this. We move into that place I like to call the we space. Letting go of our pride, letting go of the need to blame, releasing the need to be right, or even to have all the answers. And we allow ourselves to go into that place of discovery. And in this space, we rise above the attitude of how we're facing our life. We allow ourselves to rise above the addictions and the cravings that we get stuck into, and we start to see a life that's more open, more imaginative. We start to envision a life from a higher perspective, and it really is a beautiful state of being. But so many times the moments that we're there are so fleeting because something comes in to grab our attention and pulls back down. So we don't have that time to really reflect or discover or see another path. But when we connect to that place, we can change. We can challenge our beliefs. We can challenge our beliefs about others. And rather than criticize or blame, we're free to take a step back and recognize that others are moving from that lower state of being, that most people are driven by their own misconceptions or pressures or whatever it is that's driving them. We can see that those who hurt us or who are against us or believe differently than them are in their own primitive lower mind space. They're in that ego space. It's all about survival or justification for what they do. Some of them are even that narcissist space, right? Where it's look at me, I'm the best, right? But in our higher space, we can go above and we can see their viciousness or their anger or their division not as some deep-seated evil, but as a state of being. That's where they are. They're acting in that primitive space, connected to their lower selves. When we go high, we can see them for who they are. We can feel compassion, and then we can do all that we need to do to protect ourselves from them without falling into that dark space of anger and hatred. In our higher space, we can perceive that the appropriate response to these people isn't fear, it isn't cynicism, it isn't aggression, but the appropriate response is love. Not some passionate love, not some friendly love, but a heartfelt, compassionate love. Now that's kind of tough for some people, but it is the truth. When we're faced with a world that seems filled with suffering and divisiveness, that's filled with people lashing out against each other, we can tap into the tenderness within ourselves. We can see the beauty and the vulnerability of the world and know the appropriate, most fitting response to an angry world is sympathy and kindness. We can tap into that truth. And as we practice connecting to that higher state of being, as we practice rising above the noise, we tend to start living our life that way more and more and more, because we're connecting to it more and more and more. And suddenly, we start noticing the beauty around us. We start to see the sky above and the clouds and the sunrise, the stars and the moon. We start to look and see the beautiful world around us. Suddenly we start to see more light than darkness, more love than hate. Suddenly we can see those who are trying to trap us in their web of division and fear and say no. We can turn it off. That's the most powerful thing I can teach anyone, is that we have the power to turn it off most of the time. When we tap into the higher perspective, we let go of the need to have something to make us happy. And we see that happiness is already here. We start to discover that the things that were stressing us aren't so important. And the darkness is replaced by the light. And when others encounter us as we move through our life connected to that higher state of being, when we start walking in our truth of love and compassion and kindness, people start to feel that energy. They start to notice the difference. And even though they might not know what it is that they're touched by, they're being touched by the power of love. And that's what this is all about. It's there. We have it within us. But those moments are so fleeting that we're not always paying attention to us. But we need to do all that we can to preserve them, or to make them more of a reality in our life. We can't expect them to be there all of the time, because we need to go out into the world and in spaces that we should be protecting ourselves, where we shouldn't feel so peaceful and comfortable. But in the spaces where we feel safe, in the spaces where we feel peaceful, we should choose to be there in our own spaces. By paying attention to what we're doing in our own space, we can change everything. In our own space, if we allow ourselves to sink into that space of peacefulness and tap into that truth, we can nurture it and care for it. But in our own space, if we turn on the television or reach for a device, we should ask ourselves why. What am I tuning into? Am I allowing that negative stuff, that primitive stuff, to come into my space of higher being? Are we watching the news or listening to all these people speaking from their lower states of being? We're exposing ourselves to those people, and we're tapping into our own lower state of being. Those human responses of anger, fear, and pain, even if we're listening to them through a speaker or through a device, are empowering those things within us. So suddenly we're no longer in that higher state of being. We're connected to the things that pull us down instead of the things that lift us up. And we always have a choice. Our higher consciousness raises us up out of that ego space above the primitive mind, so that we can easily be connected to the creative power that we have within us. But we can just as easily be pulled right back down by just turning on the wrong thing. With practice, we can make this higher state of being not be so fleeting. It's a choice, and it's a practice. It takes practice, because the habitual mind wants to go into the same old routine. It wants to be stimulated by those things that cause that anger and that angst and that fear, because it's used to that space. So at first it's not easy to turn things off, to stop watching a program. The message that our mind will send us is like, well, wait, you might miss out on something. You might miss a message. You might miss and not be so informed. But the truth is, you already know. You already know about this person you don't like. You already know who that politician is that you keep regurgitating the same old story about. With practice, we can start connecting to the more beautiful spaces in our lives, to the creativity that we have within. With practice, we can start living a life more and more in the space of our higher truth, focusing on what truly matters. With practice, we can live a life of equanimity, where we become like a boulder in the middle of a stream. And the stream is the world around us, and we hold ourselves in that truth, and we watch the world in all of its glory, protecting ourselves from those that we need to, but embracing and loving the world and loving our life. We only have one. So why are we wasting so much time caught up in the stuff, being pulled down into the lower space, when we have the ability to rise above? That's my message for today. Do with it what you will, but have a great day. I'm Coach Bill.